Now, just staying on top of some of these rule changes and how it's going to affect the Knicks right here. I mean, the salary cap is going to go to 136 million. The luxury tax is going to be at 165. And if you're about $7 million over that, that's the first threshold. And then when you're $17 million over, which is at 182 million, once you hit that threshold, you become limited on how you can maneuver from matching salaries. That old wage is taking two guys for one star, match up their salary, and the salaries are almost about even. Can't do that no more. Once you're $17 million over the cap, they sort of limit you. You can only trade like a max contract for an exact contract. Like, it comes that close. So basically, the more expensive your team is, the less team acquisition tools you have to maneuver and get other players. Even mid-level exception contracts, you can't even do those anymore. Also, on top of that, you add the fact that the Knicks have a lot of draft capital, or just a good amount. With this new CBA, once you're $17 million over the luxury tax, my God, they basically start freezing your picks 7 years ahead. So if you stay over that $17 million mark 2 out of 4 seasons, then they're going to instantly make that first round pick that they're froze at the end of the first round. It's instantly a late first round pick off rip. And then also with these new salary cap rules, things get kind of interesting, because you look at teams like the 76ers. If they happen to, maneuver off of James Harden, get another high contract guy, re-sign Tyrese Maxey, and let's say Embiid won it out. And the Sixers right now, they're hovering around, $172 million in cap. So let's say Embiid wanted to come to the Knicks. That leaves us in a tricky situation, because now the Sixers, they can't really maneuver as much as far as matching salaries. Like, the Knicks would be able to grab 2 players and try to match it with them, but they wouldn't be able to do it on their side because they're over a certain threshold in the luxury tax. That's where things get tricky with this new CBA. So even if superstars want to leave certain teams and go to different, so even if superstars want to leave their teams and go to other markets, depending on how much over the luxury tax their team is, they might not be able to even do that. They can only get star for star. This new CBA does have its negatives. It definitely has its negative and drawbacks, but it definitely has some positives too. Because the Knicks, where we at now, we're like in that sweet spot in between 135 to 165 million. But it does leave us room to maneuver and have the chance to offer teams at least 4 first-round picks for guys this season. Because when you look at other teams going forward, if they're about $7 million over the cap, they can only offer 3 first-round picks. Teams that are under the cap, under that 165, or just at that 165, they can offer 4 first-round picks. So certain teams can just off rip, just have the upper hand in obtaining players. And that's another reason why you still haven't seen the Knicks re-sign Quickley yet. They're trying to figure out if they can make a move for this season, because if they re-sign Quickley now, where he has a rookie scale contract, like $5 million for this year, if they re-sign him, let's say they give him 18 mil going forward for the next 5 years, his contract get real tricky because we're trading away $5 million this year, but it hits as 18 next year. And depending on the team that he is going to, some teams are not going to want to hit over that second apron. They do not want to be $17 million over the cap, because that's where they're going to start becoming restricted on the moves that they can make. So contracts like Quickley, Tyrese Maxey in Philly, that's the reason why you haven't seen them sign their extensions yet. Things get real tricky. Even though both the Knicks and Philly have more than enough room to give both of these guys $20 million for 5 years. And that's another thing with Quickley, he automatically qualifies now for a 5-year extension. I think all year is guaranteed, which is very interesting. They switched that up too. But definitely for sure, the Knicks already started kind of structuring guys' deals a certain way, is because I think they were looking ahead of all these rule changes. I mean, you can even see Josh Hart. Everyone is wondering why he opted into his deal, but the Knicks pretty much can guarantee him 5 years. And Josh Hart, low-key, he qualifies for more money over the cap with this new CBA. So he used to qualify for what, 120% over the, of the cap. Now he qualifies for 140. So he is benefiting by opting in, and he's giving the Knicks flexibility for the current year to possibly make a move and get someone else in case they got to make a trade and match two guys' salary, aka Evan Fournier, somebody else. They can match a couple salaries to trade for a star. But this is like the last season you could really do that. Next year, once again, teams that are over the cap, they're going to become limited. Let's just say, for this example, the Knicks were trying to make a trade with the Golden State Warriors, which we all know are over the cap. This season, they can actually grab a couple guys, match it up, and get one of the stars that the Warriors have, right? They could do that this season. Next year, if they try to make that same move, the Warriors cannot do it. They cannot match. They're $17 million over the cap, so it limits them. They can only match an exact salary for an exact salary. So they would have to trade, let's say, Klay Thompson's salary for another guy who makes like $40 million, or even Stephen Curry. Let's just say somehow this is just an example. Let's just say somehow they wanted to trade Curry. They can only trade Curry for someone that matches his salary almost to a T. It could be a couple percentage points off, but it's almost to a T. And that's only because they're $17 million over the cap. I know this shit gets kind of confusing, but at the end of the day, starting next season, if a star wants out and his team is $17 million over the cap already, it's going to be a major issue even making a trade for that team. That team is pretty much going to be stuck with that star. That's just the way the new CBA is set up. And just for the Knicks also, expiring contracts like Evan Fournier's becomes really valuable this season, as there's going to be quite a few teams. They're going to begin to start pivoting and trying to get below that threshold of, being over the cap by 17 million. Some of these teams are almost about at 180. They're going to try to get under that cap because they're not trying to lose draft picks. They're not trying to be limited on what moves they can make. So contracts like Evan Fournier's is going to be super, super valuable this season. Now, another interesting thing with the Knicks is that Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson, man, are two kind of star players right now. Man, these guys, if they keep going in, they're going to be eligible for Supermax, because they made it I don't want to say they made it easy to make all NBA, but definitely with these new rule changes, guys now have to play 65 games, and all NBA teams are now have no position. I know there's a ton of guards in the East, ton of guards in the West that always don't make all NBA because there's way too many guys. Now it's easier for them to make it because there's no positions in the all NBA teams. So you have the fact that guys might get hurt or guys might not play 65 games, and also there's no positions. So that could trigger all NBA selections for Brunson and Randle. Thus, they qualify for at least 35% of the cap. So their salaries go up. In case that does happen, that'll kind of nudge us faster of going over certain thresholds. So, because once again, even if you go over the cap in the first apron, which is over $7 million, once you go over the cap 7 mil, you start to become slightly limited. But it's not until you hit over $17 million over the cap is where they really put a stranglehold on your ass. But interesting enough, the Knicks got Randle on a nice little discount. Brunson, the way he structured his deal, I believe it's on a descending. I mean, it's interesting the way they structure a lot of these things. But with the new CBA, they could actually change the way they structure some of these deals. Now, I see Randle and Brunson on the last year of their contracts. They have a player option. They could actually negotiate with the Knicks, kind of opt out of that last year. If they have to take a salary, lower for that season, they could do that now. And then the following years of that extension, the salary could climb up. That's just in case they need to stay under that $17 million of luxury tax. So you never know, because sometimes when their contracts come up, other guys need to be extended. So now the NBA overall, they allow teams to either, negotiate deals with their players before that last year, so they can negotiate that salary lower if they have to. And then the rest of the years, it will increase. Yeah, that's something interesting they're doing there. They're kind of making it more flexible for players and teams to negotiate with each other during that final year where all those years are optional. So in the final year of that contract, whether it's a team option or player option, they made it very flexible for them to negotiate, even if the salary is lower for that 1 year. But starting the rest of the way, the salary can go back to normal. So that's definitely something worth paying attention to. But definitely in this Leon Rose era, I tell you what, there's been a lot of pivoting, And this new CBA, I'm telling you, he has the right team around him too. That Brock Allard, that guy he hired off of Cleveland to kind of be his salary cap guru, man, that Brock Allard boy, that dude is nasty. Remember that season when LeBron kind of kicked everyone out of Cleveland before the playoffs started, before that trade deadline, and all of a sudden they got a whole new roster, a bunch of whole new guys, and they kind of made all the numbers work. Yeah, it was him. It was Brock Allard that made that work. So the Knicks right now, they have him in the front office working with Leon Rose. So I believe we got the right team around us. Leon Rose not really answering questions. They're keeping everything in-house. I like the way he's maneuvered so far. But like I said, he's going to have to land that plane, and it's going to be one hell of a ride.